This episode of Digital Photography Cafe is brought to you by Focus Pyramid, the autofocus lens calibration tool for your camera, and by Daisy Grip, for a child's smile for a photographer's camera.
Welcome to the Digital Photography Cafe. I'm Trevor Current, your digital marketing guy.
And I'm Joseph Christina, your professional photographer.
So grab a latte, pull up a chair, and join us as we chat about the art and business of photography.
So hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Last week we talked about Google Plus custom URLs, portfolio websites, and the Tim Thumb security hack. If you haven't listened to last week's show, I encourage you to do so. You can find it on iTunes, the popular Stitcher and TuneIn radio apps, or simply head over to our website, digitalphotographycafe.com, and listen online.
So Joe, we are back, episode 69.
We are here.
So you're swimming down there, huh?
I am doing the backstroke. Yeah. We had the originally we thought it was going to be the hurricane. It ended up being just simply a tropical storm, but it sat over us forever down here in South Florida. And there was a certain area, almost like an alleyway of storms that just stayed over us just for hours and hours and hours. And in my location, we got 15 inches of rain in less than 24 hours.
Man, that's horrible.
Yeah. So we basically have the governor out. We have like our congressman, the representative, all kinds of stuff, trying to get pumps into the community. My community is just pretty much flooded. We are basically, our house looks like, if you take a look at it from overhead, it actually looks like an island. Honest to God, there's like a moat.
Waterfront property, my friend.
Yeah. So you look out back, there's
your
water.
value just went up.
it's or down. I don't know. So, so it's pretty bad. I mean, we have guards stationed out at the gate so we don't have riffraff coming through trying to steal stuff or something. Oh, we have airboats from FEMA and the Red Cross, and there's horses being evacuated because they're standing in 2-3 feet of water.
Yeah,
I came into the community. If you don't have a truck, you can't get in because it is more than 2.5 feet in some locations just to get to the house. And it's
that's
horrible.
Deep. Yeah, that's pretty deep. Yeah. Now for you got to watch out for the gators, man. They'll be migrating.
Yeah. But there's no land, so they're trying to find, so you got snakes, you got, alligators. I had a jackrabbit the other day. He was like here, and there's nowhere for him to run. It's like, listen, buddy, don't run. You got nowhere to go.
Exactly. You're going to be swimming.
So I threw him some carrots and lettuce and I left. So I don't know. But the sad thing is the rabbit's not around anymore. And I know that thing didn't swim. So I don't know. I have a feeling someone got him.
Gator.
I don't know. So yeah, it's been quite eventful. How about over there?
Well, we got a little bit of rain. I mean, we haven't really gotten too much. I mean, not to rub it in your face, but it's been sunny and 80 degrees up here.
Yeah, you're the best, man. That's why I do these shows with you, because you make me feel so good.
Yeah. Well, you get even when the wintertime hits up here. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're like, I'm freezing, I'm putting another log on. I'm like
shoveling out 2 feet of snow. You get 2 feet of water, I got 2 feet of snow.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I tell you what, this week, one of the things that's really been bothering me, and it's, I think we've talked about some of this in the past, but it's just really starting to get to me. This whole spam thing with Twitter and this, the getting these messages, these DMs all the time.
I get them all the time.
God, someone's talking.
Gets them all the time. It's not just us.
It's so bad. Someone's talking crap about you. Hey, did you see this video that you were in? Or go to 1 minute 42 and you'll see yourself on the. It's like, oh my God,
yeah, I know.
For
it's
real.
Ridiculous.
And now we're seeing it on Facebook. So what really gets me on the Facebook is what happens is, there'll be a picture of one that just happened recently. It was like a green Nike. And then underneath it was like a link to go and buy the shoe or something. And it's like, hey, you're tagged in this image of this shoe. And, it's on my wall. It's a shoe and I'm tagged in it. And it's for someone to sell the damn shoe.
Yeah.
And, and then I go and looked at who was the one that tagged it. And it was like one of my, local news people that follow me. And he's got like 13,000 followers. He's not tagging me in a shoe. So obviously his account is compromised. So it's like, obviously you don't go and unfriend him or something. This is just rampant. It's just pissing me off. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with all these networks. They're popular, so the hackers are trying to find ways to, to get into them and stuff. And when they do, they compromise the network, and it's just bad for everybody. I know Twitter works diligently to try and prevent this, but really the only thing you can do, this is what I do. If I'm following somebody that I know is a photographer, that I know is a real person, I've seen their other tweets, and then all of a sudden I start getting these DMs from them, oh, did you see yourself in this video? I can't believe you didn't see yourself being taped, whatever. I'll go and, shoot them a quick DM and say, hey, listen, I think your account's gotten hacked and go change your password.
Right.
And then that usually fixes things, unless they come in through an OAuth app. And that is a problem too. You connect with these websites using your Twitter account in OAuth, and now they have the ability to post and send messages on your behalf. So if that site gets compromised, they can come in through there. So I always say, change your password and go and remove the connections for any Twitter services that you really aren't using.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Remove those services, because I know I've went into mine recently. I took a look and I've I have so many of these services connected, and some of these services I haven't, seen for the last 2 years, I haven't done nothing with. So definitely go in there and disconnect them, because if they ever get compromised, like you said, boom, you have problems right there. But it's, we talk about social media a lot. We talk about branding and, your appearance and how you look to the, the outside world, your brand. And I tell you, your system gets compromised. We talked about last week this hack, this tin thumb hack, and you end up hacked with this tin thumb problem. And I tell you what, now all of a sudden you're out there, posing as a bank. Trust me,
sure.
You're blacklisted,
you're being perceived as you don't know what's going on with your own property here. You've obviously been hacked or something's going on. And it's all about reputation management. And that really is very important in the world of social media and online presences. You need to be on top, set up those Google alerts, know who's talking about you, monitor your DMs and Twitter, your outgoing as well as your incoming. Yeah,
that's very important. And, not only monitor what people are saying about you, monitor about what you're saying, because you never know. All of a sudden you start saying stuff that you're really not saying. Absolutely. You can kind of track it down and say, okay, now we're having a problem. Where is this coming from? Oh, it's coming from my Facebook account. Boom. Immediately change your password. That's to, start it. And then you can start going into the OAuth problems, who knows?
Yeah, it really is a big issue. And it's something that, you just have to be aware of and be proactive about and monitor all these different services.
Absolutely. Well, I think the show, we're going to kind of get into something that's really important to photographers, and that's just making tack sharp images. But I tell you what, before we get into that, let's go ahead and take a quick break and hear from one of our sponsors.
Have you ever tried to photograph a child who was on the move and wouldn't settle down? A child who just wouldn't give your camera the time of day no matter what tricks you tried? If so, we have some great news for you. Introducing the Daisy Grip, your go-to tool for capturing a child's smile.
Just think of the Daisy Grip as your third hand. Just place it into your camera's hot shoe, insert the child's favorite toy or puppet, and let the smiles begin. Imagine the storytelling magic that you'll have at your disposal with a ferocious lion or a friendly monster sitting on top of your camera. For the ultimate attention getter, place your smartphone into the Daisy Grip and play the child's favorite cartoon.
With the addition of a Daisy Grip bracket, you can free up your hot shoe for a flash or wireless transmitter.
Let Daisy Grip put the space above your lens to work for you. Make this indispensable tool your new best friend. Head over to daisygrip.com/DPC to get the listener discount.
The Daisy Grip, for a child's smile, for a photographer's camera. So, Joe, Focus Pyramid has been a longtime sponsor of the show, and we really want to thank them for their support. And, recently they just released a free ebook titled 10 Tips for Creating Tack-Sharp Photos, a photographer's guide to sharper images. So it's really pretty good. And you know what? We want to encourage all of our listeners to head over to focuspyramid.com and download their free copy today. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, we already did that, and that's kind of, I think, where we're going to get some of our information today to kind of go over. And yeah, tack-sharp images is so important. As photographers, we're always striving, obviously, to be the absolute best that we can be, make the, best possible images that we can, so we're buying always the latest gear. Sometimes we buy too much gear.
Sure.
But it's always, we're buying always the latest stuff to, try to, keep, one step ahead. And, we're reading the books and we're going to these seminars and we're doing workshops and, everything to kind of boost our creativity as well as our technique, because technique is so important, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're always trying to step up our game. As we always say, you've got to keep growing. You've got to keep moving in order to stay competitive in this photography business.
Absolutely. I think, one of the absolute best ways is just, make sharp images. That's just the bottom line. I mean, the people can say, oh, it's artistic, it's just slightly blurry and we wanted to do that, well, if you really wanted to make a let's say a unsharp image,
right.
Okay, I get it. When we used to do that, we used to, back in the day, we would go and, take a filter and go and smear on some Vaseline.
Right?
Yeah. And just come up with this
big trick.
Yeah, we get this beautiful blur that was kind of varied, because that Vaseline didn't just sit on there in one spot.
Right.
So it just came out. It was just a beautiful technique. But
nowadays we have Photoshop. So we don't need the Vaseline. Yeah, that's it. I mean, taking and making the sharpest images you can in camera is always the best way to go. You can always soften them. You can always do techniques in post, but to try and sharpen them in post to, compensate for, a blurry picture, it just never really looks good. I mean, if it's a slight touch, just a little bit of a sharpen filter to just snap it a little bit. I mean, you can kind of get away with that, especially if it's being used real small. But then you start blowing these images up into, billboard size and forget it. I mean, they're just not going to look right. They're going to look a little pixely. They're going to look, jagged. It's just not the way to do it. You really want to get it right in camera.
Yeah, we always say that. Just get it right in the camera. That includes sharpness, it includes lighting, that includes everything. Just get it. If you just get it right, it's just going to save you time, which goes, which saves you money,
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
spend your time.
Money.
Exactly. Spend your time taking photographs and not editing photographs in Photoshop,
Right.
And it was the same way back with film, take a really good picture and, you don't have to sit in darkroom smelling chemicals for hours and hours and hours and hours,
Right,
you just get it right.
That's where I think, if we could say photographers have gotten soft, when you were doing
Pardon the
film,
pun?
When you were doing film, I mean, I think you paid more attention to every shutter release you made.
Yeah, but you paid for
film
it.
was expensive.
That's right.
You paid for it. Now with digital, it's kind of like, bang, 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 bang. They're clicking off some shots and not really worrying about it because they know it's digital. It's not costing them anything. And odds are pretty good they can make a decent looking image in post.
Right. Absolutely. So one of the topics they talked about in this ebook was putting your aperture on a diet. And, reading about it, it's just so true. As photographers, we're always taught, you want to have this beautiful blur, you want to have this specific spot that is going to be in focus, and then everything else just needs to just fall off to the beautiful blur. And you know what? That's right. It kind of does
it's
give
a great effect. Yep.
A great effect. It adds to a look. It adds to a method or a way of leading the viewer into the photograph to the specific spot of interest that the photographer is trying to convey, the story that they're trying to make.
Right.
But the idea of putting your aperture on the diet is simply this. Let's say we're shooting at a lens that shoots at 2.8. Well, at 2.8, it's going to be at its weakest spot, at its least focused spot. So what I would say, what they're kind of promoting here is, instead of shooting at 2.8, shoot at 3.2. Shoot at 3.5, just slightly above the maximum. You'll still get beautiful, beautiful bokeh, but you'll, that beautiful blur to isolate your subject, but you will get by far sharper images than shooting just simply wide open, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's going to increase your depth of field. So your range of focus, your range of sharpness is increased. So if you are shooting a portrait, let's say, you're going to have more of the eye area and the nose area, and even, maybe back a little bit further towards the ears, that are going to be in better focus than if you were shooting wide open. And, of course, this really depends on the lens too. I mean, if you've got a cheap lens that is able to shoot at 2.8, or a really good lens that can shoot at 2.8, you are going to get a sharper image at 2.8. I mean, I know I've got my 85 millimeter 1.8, and that looks beautiful wide open, but that's the lens. I mean, if I close it down a little bit, I mean, obviously it's going to look great. It's going to
absolutely
keep that range in there,
Yeah. So for that 85 that 85 1.8, if you shoot it at 2.0, right around there, or something just slightly above, you're going to get a little bit sharper of an image. So I think that's a great point. And it's something very easy to do, and you don't really have to do anything extra to kind of get there. One of the other techniques that they talked about, and they kind of call it lens candy, and I kind of like the whole idea, because it talks about finding your lens's sweet spot. And the sweet spot on every lens is slightly different. So normally it's right about in the center of your focal range, your f-stop. So let's say if you have a camera that does 2.8 to, let's say, 22, right around 8, 9, maybe 11 is going to be your absolute sharpest point for that specific lens. And that's something that you have to find out for yourself. You can either figure it out for yourself by shooting a lot of pictures, or you could go online, check with the other people, you can check with the manufacturer, whatever. But this is where your lens is going to be at its absolute sharpest point. So for me, what I do, which might not be what every, portrait photographer does, but for me, what I'll do is I'll take, for example, my 70-200, or if I shoot a 24-70, whatever I'm shooting for the portrait, I'll take that sharpest point. So maybe it's an 8 or maybe 11, and I will make sure that I have enough light in the room. I'll make sure that everything, as far as the shutter speed, everything is perfect to be able to get that specific f-stop. And I will shoot the portraits at that f-stop. Why? Because the bottom line is I want what I want perfectly sharp. I don't want it slightly blurry. So if I'm shooting an eye, I'm focusing in on the model's eyes, I want those rock solid. And later in post, if we need to go ahead and make something blurry, it's easy, very easy. But to bring it back and to make it sharp, now that's a horse of another color, right?
Yeah, sure. And you know what? I mean, even lens to lens, it could be the same exact, manufactured lens, but one lens copy to the next lens copy. I mean, that sweet spot could be slightly different. So even if you found, specs online of where that sweet spot is, I think really the best way to do it, if you really want to get nuts about it, is do the test shots.
Right.
Try it at the different apertures, see really where you're getting your sharpest image.
Absolutely.
And it may be very difficult to tell, when you're talking about, one stop to the next stop to the next stop. But if you look at wide open, you look at closed down, you look at the middle, I mean, those are three extremes. You should certainly be able to see where the difference is.
Yeah, I always suggest, take your lens and take your f-stop range and divide it into quarters, shoot at 0, shoot at 25%, 50, 75, and then at 100. So, that, 2.8 and then, right around 8 and then around 16 and then maxed out at whatever it is, 30, 32, whatever. And this way you can really see the transitions. And once you find where that sweet spot is pretty close, then I would just shoot every single f-stop in that area. And then you'll be able to kind of really hone it down so that especially for landscape photographers that really want the absolute sharpest images. And, so many people are like, oh, crank that thing open, but just shoot it at f22. Well, guess what? f22 might be less sharp than 11 on that specific lens.
Right.
So really, if you want to make that sharp image, you need to know the gear. You need to know the lens.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
One of the other ones that we saw in the ebook that probably a lot of folks out there probably don't realize this, and they talk about these IS lens, the image stabilization lenses, and they say you need to take these lenses and give them a Valium. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And it really makes sense. And these IS lenses, the way they work, if you don't know what an image stabilization lens works, is it's got a little motor in there and it kind of vibrates. And what it does is you have usually two different positions. Let's say you have image stabilization 1 and image stabilization 2, and one basically vibrates horizontal, one vibrates vertical. So if you're trying to track a car, well, you want the one that's going to be, working for horizontal movement, obviously not vertical. So this is basically how it works, and it moves around. Now, using an IS lens can afford you 2 or 3 stops of light. So you can hand hold, really some real, I would say I could probably hand hold down to a 1/13 of a second with some of these IS lenses. And that is slow.
Yeah. Yep.
But the thing with this is they are constantly trying to stabilize. If you take an IS lens and lock it down onto, let's say, a tripod, the lens still thinks that the image is not stable.
That it's moving, sure.
Even though it's rock solid, right?
Yep.
So it is sitting there vibrating internally, trying to stabilize something that doesn't need to be stabilized. So what happens is, if you shoot an IS lens locked down on a tripod, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a more blurry image or a less sharp image, which people don't understand this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it might be a slight difference, but it's still going to be a difference. Simply by flicking that switch and turning image stabilization off, it will actually make your image a lot sharper, which is which is, I know it's counterintuitive, but that definitely makes a big difference. Now, I like image stabilization. I don't have the steadiest hands when it comes to hand holding. That's why I usually like to shoot a little faster. So, I'll keep that image stabilization on. But yeah, I mean, doing lockdown on a tripod, doing portraits or doing product photography or whatever, definitely turn that off. And so those motors aren't going nuts trying to stabilize something that doesn't need to be stabilized.
Right. And you'll actually see when you do this, the battery life of your camera just gets sucked to nothing, because those motors in that lens is going back and forth. It's like trying its best to sit there and just keep it steady, even though it already is steady. So you need to shut that off. So if you have an IS lens, if you're going to lock it down, turn off IS, and you're going to do yourself a favor, and you're going to start taking sharper images immediately. So that was definitely one that I'm sure a lot of people, out there, a good percentage would never even have heard of or even thought of, but it definitely is a fact. So, another one that we saw in there, which we've talked about in the past, which is so true, and that really has to do with the glass. All lenses are not created equal, and we've talked about this. You take a Canon, 1.8 in comparison to a Canon 1.4, one is made out of plastic, one is made out of metal. The difference between the two is kind of, I would say, close to night and day, right?
Yeah. I mean, that plastic lens that, the toy lens that we always talk about, we both really like it. but there is no doubt that it's a cheap lens. I mean, it's not high quality. It's not, a rock solid professional lens. Yeah, you might be able to create some great looking images, but it's not going to be the sharpest of lenses for sure.
Right. They're just, the difference between a plastic mount and a metal mount is night and day. And then the glass itself is just not the same. You're going to pay you're going to pay $80 for a lens compared to $380. They didn't just make up these numbers and say, oh, we want to charge more on this.
Right.
There's actually something going on there. You're getting better glass and better refinement, more glass inside of it. You'll find that it's heavier because it's made out of metal and there's more glass. It's just a better optic. So, and that, like we were saying before, that can go from lens copy to lens copy. So you might have a 1.8 plastic lens that is so bleeding sharp that, the next guy will say, oh my God, mine looks like a whole guy. I mean,
exactly.
I don't get it. How'd you do this? But that's how it is. And I always recommend if you're out there in the market buying a piece of glass, pay a couple extra bucks, buy it locally, bring your body and go snap a couple of shots with a lens at the camera store. If you can do it, it's the best way to do it. And usually they'll have 2 or 3 or 4 copies of the exact same lens. Don't be afraid. Say, listen, can I try out a few of these? Sure. You snap on one, then you snap on the next, and you take the exact same shot over and over. And when you go and review that, you will see that one copy is sharper than the next. That's just how it is. You do have this variance in the production, in the manufacturing. The other side of this is too, that let's say for Sony or Olympus or Canon or Nikon, these lenses are mass produced. They're good quality lenses. They're made by the manufacturer. They're quality. The thing is, they're not the same quality as, for example, a German lens like a Zeiss glass lens or a Hasselblad lens. It's just not the same quality. So you do, that, and I like that what they say, not all glass is created equal, because it really isn't. So, and we've said this in the past, if you have money to spend on gear, put that money into glass. That glass is forever, in air quotes, whereas the camera bodies, they're just not. They're more like disposable at this point.
Yeah. And, putting the money in glass doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy L lenses either if you're a Canon shooter. I mean, there are a lot of really good EF lenses that are certainly, of high quality. Again, I go back to my 85 millimeter. I mean, I absolutely love that lens. It's a solid build. It produces beautiful pictures. And I would say that is every bit of a professional lens, but it's not an L lens.
Right.
It is cheaper, but it's not cheaply made. It's got great optics in it. So really, definitely shop around, look and see the focal range that you need. Look for reviews. Obviously, the lenses that have a lot of reviews, you can go to Canon's website, you can go to B&H, you can go to any lens manufacturer's website, any of the third-party sites that sell these things. Look for the reviews and see what people are saying about them, see what their star ratings are. If you find an EF lens that is, a couple $100, but it's getting 5 stars, read the reviews about it, see why it's so great, and then maybe test that out rather than just immediately going out and dropping the coin on, an L lens if maybe that's not what you really need. Right.
Absolutely. It could be overkill. That lens you have, that 85-1.8, is by far one of the better lenses that Canon have come up with. So, and in just talking to other photographers, chat with them on Twitter, chat with them on Facebook, and just ask them, what do you use for this specific purpose? Don't be shy about it. I get questions all the time, and I'm continuously, I'm going to put a fact together, of all the gear. But yeah, I'm always telling people, what I suggest over me using this stuff on a regular basis, renting all kinds of stuff for different projects, or using the stuff that I have. And like I said, sometimes I feel like more of a collector than a photographer because I have so many bodies and so much equipment.
That's right.
But you get to know the equipment, what's good and what's not good. Now, one of the other items, which is kind of a funny item, it's get to know your diopter. Your diopter is your friend. And when I talk to people about diopter, they're like, "What the hell is a diopter?" What exactly?
Yeah, when we were going over this and kind of prepping for it, I'm like, I wonder if my camera even has a diopter setting, because I don't use it. I've never really had the need to use it, but I'm damn, it does have one, and it does make a difference.
Yeah, I tell you what, when I hit 40, it's like, I don't know, one eye is kind of good, one eye is not good. I mean, I don't know. It's just not the way it used to be. And I know I've gone back to, each camera and reset my diopters. So if you don't know what a diopter is, basically if you look at your DSLR, and usually it's on the right-hand side, you'll see a little wheel. It's like a plus minus, like
it's
wheel.
Right next to your viewfinder.
Exactly. So when you look in that viewfinder, the best way to do it is just take your diopter and just spin it all in one direction. Either all left, all right, and then look through it. And then let your autofocus system focus in onto something, piece of paper or whatever, and you look through it. And now everything's blurry. I don't know how many people out there don't even know about the diopter and like, I don't know, my lens just sucks. I don't know what the hell is wrong
maybe
here. I
look
look
not
through
your lens, maybe it's your eyes.
Yeah, maybe it's your eyes, maybe it's your diopter's not set. So, so you spin it all the way to one side and everything will be blurry. Now, your autofocus system just picked up focus. You just heard it go beep beep, so we're good, right? Supposedly. Let's make believe that the autofocus system works properly. And now you just take your diopter and now start spinning it in the opposite direction slowly until that lettering that was just focused on is tack sharp.
Right.
Now, that is focus now. That viewfinder is focused for that specific eye, not the other eye, because your eyes are different. For that specific eye with no contact or with a contact, with reading glasses, with, bifocals, whatever you have, it's set. Now, if you change any of those variables, you have to reset the diopter. If not, everything's going to be blurry.
Absolutely. I wear glasses, and I also have reading glasses for when I'm working on the computer.
Right.
And like most of the time when I shoot, I'm not wearing glasses. If I'm outside, I have sunglasses on, I take them off. I shoot with just the bare eye.
Sure.
So I'm using my, crappy eye, looking through this viewfinder, trying to see focus, trying to see the image. And, the diopter was set to, what worked well. When I actually looked through it with my glasses on, it wasn't right. So I'm
like, I can't see.
I had to click it a couple times to get it to actually be sharp with my glasses on. So that is a big thing. If you're sometimes shooting with glasses or contacts and sometimes without, remember to adjust your diopter.
Yeah. And it's simple, it's easy, and it's so so many times overlooked, especially for, the amateurs that are out there. They're just starting to get involved, with the DSLRs. And, a DSLR is, like an operating system. There's so many pieces to the puzzle. There's so many things. It's like Photoshop, you never fully learn it. There's so many little, tidbits and trinkets and stuff in there that you can possibly set. And then after you get to know it and you know it inside and out, then you could go into your custom settings, and holy God, now you got another couple of weeks to sit there and you can really, kind of fuss with it till you get it exactly the way you want it. Because I tell you what, if I hand my bodies to just an amateur photographer, or even a professional that doesn't shoot the way I shoot, they'd be like, wow, this thing's not focusing because I don't use the top trigger to focus, So they're like, I don't know how to use this thing. This thing is not set up right. Well, it's set up with, it's set up for me. It's set up
for you. Exactly.
The way I shoot, how I shoot. And, and that I encourage people that are getting involved and even the pros out there, set these things up so that they're comfortable for you. So many people, they just leave it stock,
Right.
I mean, don't, this is your livelihood. This is your weapon. This is your tool. You really set. Yeah, it's like a gun. Massage it and clean it, and you caress it. Make sure everything is working. But then also set your custom sights up. That's your diopter, your sights on your gun. You really need to make sure everything is custom for you and no one else. Someone else picks it up, they can't use it. That's fine. That's the way it should be. Go and use your own camera. So, but anyways,
well, that's a good segue into the last one we want to talk about is autofocus lens calibration. I mean, that's part of these custom settings.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think, I think that autofocus lens calibration is got to be, by far the most overlooked feature that modern DSLRs have.
Absolutely.
it is, it is I'd say bar none, the easiest way to get just consistent sharp images. If you calibrate those lenses, you're just going to get a sharper image because, we all know that I would say the majority of the time, let's say 85% of the time, we are dependent on our autofocus system. Now that could be because we're shooting fast motion stuff, maybe because we're trying to get things in the camera quick, maybe we're not shooting a product and we're dialing in focus specific. We're shooting a model, we're shooting whatever it is, a wedding. I mean, could you imagine, back in the old days when we used to have to manually focus. Every shot.
Yeah.
Right? Every shot during a wedding. So you're pulling focus, that's why it's like people are like, they cry about using a DSLR as a video tool. Okay. And they're having to pull focus. Well, guess what? We used to pull focus. That's all that we had. We're tracking the bride coming down the aisle. Well, guess what? When we were shooting manual, that's what we were doing. And we couldn't look the back of the back of the camera to see if we got it right. No. You just better damn get it right. So we were pulling focus, as a bride was walking down the aisle all day long. So
and doing it through that small viewfinder. I mean, no LCD with this, optical magnifier that you got your face planted up against to see all the detail and all its color glory. No, I mean, you're looking for the little optical viewfinder. And that was always hard for me, again, because of my eyesight. Right. So I really, with now in digital with the autofocus system, I do rely a lot on the autofocus system when I'm out and about. I mean, yes, if I'm doing product photography, I may even turn that off and just manually bang it in there, But yeah, most of the time I'm using my autofocus system.
Yeah. We basically we expect our autofocus system to get it right. It just get it right. And you know what? More times than not, it's not right. It's either front focusing or it's back focusing. Could be slightly or it could be drastically, but this is just how it is. Right out of the factory, you take a lens and you snap it onto your camera body. You're going to be either rear focusing or back focusing or front focusing. You snap on the next lens and now it might be completely different. So, lens calibration is really, really important. And that front and rear focus is something that you need to do away with.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And just kind of, to spell it out. Front focusing just means that your sensor is thinking that the focal point is in front of where you actually want it. Right. And then back focusing is just the opposite. So, that really is a big issue and a big cause of why you get, slightly blurry images.
Yeah. And, to kind of put it into a picture, for everyone that's listening or watching, if you're doing, let's say, a portrait of a model, this is a perfect illustration. We want to get, let's say, her eyes or his eyes perfectly crystal clear. We always say the eyes is the window to the soul, right? We want to make sure those eyes are crystal clear. If the camera is front focusing and I lock in on the eyes, when you go and review this image, the eyes might be pretty clear, but you'll notice that the tip of the nose is rock solid. Every pore, every hair, every little bit on the tip of the nose is perfect, and the eyes are okay. Now, if it was, if the combination is rear focusing, now we point it at the eyes, lock in, pull the trigger. Now the eyes are okay; they're slightly out of focus, but the tip of the ear is dead on.
All those little hairs coming out of that guy's ear are razor sharp.
Absolutely perfect, and we know we love just like the.
Oh, we love those hairy ears.
Yeah. So we were talking about film just a few seconds ago. Back in the day, that's what we would have to do. We would snap on a lens, we would have to compensate in the field. So if I knew that these two, this lens and this body linked up, produced X amount of rear focus, let's say, I would actually compensate for it by aiming at the tip of the nose instead of the eye. When digital came out.
And that's great because you even knew that is what the problem was.
Right.
So many people don't even know that this is even a problem.
Right. It's not even an issue, right?
They don't even know. They just assume that autofocus is correct and they must have just done something wrong. They pointed at the wrong spot or whatever,
Right.
and not even realizing that there is a problem with the lens in the body.
Absolutely. And, and as time went by, we got into the DSLRs. Now, at that point, we were able to see on the back of the camera how far off it was. So we were able to compensate a lot quicker than having to develop film to try to figure it out. So it did go quicker, but not until recently, within the last couple of years, the manufacturers have given us the ability to basically lock in that focus. They don't want, you don't have to take your camera body and your lens and send it back to the manufacturer and say, fix this up. Because if you did that, they'll send it back and the thing will be rock solid. And then when you go and snap on a next lens, guess what? It's off again.
Right.
So now they give us the ability to do this autofocus micro adjustments. And what that means is when you set up a target, for example, we were talking about one of the best tools out there that we use is the focus pyramid. It will actually show you how much back focus or rear focus that you're getting or how much front focus that you're getting. And you're now able to, in the camera body, say with this lens, we need to do +7. Or with this lens, we need to do -12 or whatever it is. So then the beauty of this is, as soon as you snap on that lens, that body communicates with the lens and says, hey, I'm a 50 millimeter Canon. All right, let me go ahead and change it to a -7. Now you click in the next.
That's the beauty. It remembers it, stores it in memory.
Absolutely.
And it will store it for all your lenses, not just one lens.
Exactly. So you can actually do it globally. So it does it for all your lenses, or you could do it lens specifically, which is what I would suggest. So each lens will have its own calibration. When you go snap on the next lens, it says, hey, so you really only need to do this lens calibration a couple of times. I would do it like once a month or so, but it is important. The newer bodies now have something even better. Now they also allow you to do 2 calibration spots per lens. So let's say you have a 70 to 200 zoom. Well, let's go ahead and calibrate at 70 and let's go ahead and calibrate at 200. For me,
that's really cool.
That's really cool. For me, what I do is I always calibrate every lens based on where I use it. So for me, like a 70 to 200, I use at about 180 all the time for portraits, right? So what do? I calibrate that lens at 180, at 180 millimeters, and that's where that calibration sets. And it stays there. Period. And that means that every time I snap that lens onto my body, that dead center focus spot is always the spot that's going to be in focus. That's going to be the exact focus spot. Perfect.
Yeah, that's great. There's only a few of these commercially available tools on the market.
Right.
And without a doubt, for the money, the focus pyramid is definitely the best one on the market.
Yeah. It just simply works. It's really easy. I mean, you set this thing up. It's a really quick setup. It's easy to use. You put it on a flat surface. You point your camera, dead, square at the pyramid itself. You line it up with the center focusing spot. It's got this really nice high contrast spot where your autofocus system, always locks up on. You take the shot, you review it, and then you just make your adjustment. Very simple. I've heard people that actually have used this thing and they've calibrated like all of their lenses in their kit, during a lunch break. So, I mean, it's just quick and easy, and it doesn't take a lot to do.
Now, and the beauty is it's a nice, low cost alternative to some of these higher priced products on the market.
Sure.
I mean, that could be like 4 times as much the price.
Right.
So, and we've obviously they're a sponsor and we're really happy to be working with them, but we've kind of got the inside track with them, and you know what? They've received a lot of really great feedback from their customers, and they're saying, some are saying that this is like the best $20 they ever spent. So,
right.
It's really great stuff, and you'll drop $20, $40, $50 on a light modifier for your flash.
Right.
And that's great. I mean, that gives you some really great light, but I think it's probably more important to really make sharper images right from the bat.
Absolutely.
And then get the light modifiers.
No, absolutely. And exactly. Get it right in the camera. And you know what? For me, the peace of mind that I get to be able to snap on any lens and know that the camera is going to immediately communicate with that lens and then dial in the focus so that I know that where I point that center focusing spot to is going to be dead sharp every time. I mean, I can't tell you how, my life changed completely once I started using this lens calibration stuff, because I know, over the years, let's say I'll go and shoot like a wedding or what's really brutal is when you shoot a model and you're in there and I'm going to be doing a full spread, or I'm going to do a cover, and the focus is just not exactly right on the eye. And it's like you have the perfect picture, but now the eye is slightly out of focus and you damn well you had it dead on. Is so frustrating. And just to be able to go in there now and just say, okay, no problem. Boom, boom, boom. I know that it's going to be right every single time. I tell you what, $20, I spend 100 times that to get that peace of mind for sure.
You know it. Yeah, so, we want to encourage everybody to head over to focuspyramid.com, certainly check out their product, but really definitely download that free ebook they have, the 10 tips for creating tack-sharp photos. Definitely worth it, and as we always say, the price is right.
It's free.
It's free.
Yeah, gotta love free.
Gotta love it.
Good stuff. So I think we need to get out of here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. So as usual, we really want to thank everybody for subscribing to the show, for listening to the show. If you're not subscribed, definitely head over to iTunes. Joe, we are still holding tight at 15 for the video show, number 10 for the audio.
Amazing.
I'm thrilled with that. Our numbers actually have been going through the roof too.
In the last 2 months, I saw that we've doubled our listener and viewership.
Absolutely.
Doubled.
That's just amazing. When I saw those stats, I almost fell off my chair. That is fantastic news. We're really thankful for all of you guys that have been, listening and now watching. And, if any of you write a review for us on your blog, you talk about the show, you write a review for us on iTunes, definitely let us know. We'd love to check it out. And, we'd love to add your information to our Friends of the Show page, kind of give you a little loving back. So, Joe, if people want to connect with you, what's the best place to reach you?
Of course, Twitter. We love Twitter. Yeah,
except for the spam.
Except for the spam. I just love Twitter. You can find me at Joseph Christina, and that's Christina without an H.
Yes, and I love the Twitter too, and you can check me out at Trevor Current.
Excellent, Travis. All right. Great show as always. That is show 69 in the can. If you guys have any questions or topics you'd like discussed on next week's show, send us a message through our website, digitalphotographycafe.com. Or you can connect with us on Twitter, of course, at dphotocafe. If you're listening on the go, fear not. Everything that we covered during this week's show can easily be found in our show notes at our website. Once again, keep your questions and comments coming, and we'll talk to you next week.